The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, Chapter 8, Flies and Spiders, Part 2. 2 days later, they found their path going downwards, and before long they were in the valley filled with almost entirely with mighty growth of oaks. "Is there no end to this accursed forest?" said Thorin. "Somebody must climb a tree and see if he can get his head above the roof and have a look around. The only way is to choose the tallest tree that overhangs the path." Of course, somebody meant Bilbo. They chose him because to be of any use, the climber must get his head above the topmost leaves, and so he must be light enough for the highest and slenderest branches to bear him. Poor Mr. Baggins had never had much practice in climbing trees, but they hoisted him up into the lowest branches of an enormous oak that grew right out into the path, and up he had to go as best as he could. He pushed his way through the tangled twigs with many a slap in the eye. He was greened and creamed from the old bark of greater boughs. More than once he slipped and caught himself just in time, and at last, after a dreadful struggle in a difficult place where he seemed to be no convenient branches at all, he got near the top. All the time he was wondering whether there were spiders in the tree and how he was going to get down again. Well, except by falling. In the end, he poked his head above the roof of leaves and then he found spiders, all right. But they were only small ones of ordinary size and they were after butterflies. Bilbo's eyes were nearly blinded by the light. He could hear dwarfs shouting up at him from far below, but he could not answer, only hold on and blink. The sun was shining brilliantly, and it was a long while before he could bear it. When he could, he saw all round him a sea of dark green, ruffled here and there by the breeze, and there were everywhere hundreds of butterflies. I accept they were a kind of purple emperor, a butterfly that loves the tops of oak woods, but these were not purple at all. They were a dark, dark, velvety black, without any markings to be seen. He looked at the black emperors for a long time and enjoyed the feel of breeze in his hair and on his face. But at length the cries of the dwarfs, who were now simply stamping with impatience down below, reminded him of his real business. It was no good. Gaze as much as he might, he could see no end to the trees and the leaves in any direction. His heart, that had been lighted by the sight of the sun and the feel of the wind, sank back into his toes. There was no food to go back to down below. Actually, as I have told you, they were not far off the edge of the forest, and if Bilbo had had sense to see it, the tree that he had climbed, though it was tall in itself, was standing near the bottom of the wide valley, so that from its top the trees seemed to swell up all round like edges of the great bowl, and he could not expect to see how far the forest lasted. Still, he did not see this, and he climbed down full of despair. He got to the bottom again at last, scratched, hot, and miserable. He could not see anything in the gloom below when he got there. His report soon made the others as miserable as he was. The forest goes on forever and ever and ever in all directions. "Whatever shall we do? And what is the use of sending a hobbit?" they cried, as if it was his fault. They did not care twopence about the butterflies, and were only made more angry when he told them of the beautiful breeze which they were too heavy to climb up and feel. That night they ate their very last scraps and crumbs of food. And next morning, when they woke, at the first thing they noticed was that they were still gnawingly hungry. And the next thing was that it was raining, and that here and there the drips of it was dropping heavily on the forest floor. That only reminded them that they were also parchingly thirsty without doing anything to relieve them. You cannot quench a terrible thirst by standing under giant oaks and waiting for a chance drip to fall on your tongue. The only scrap of comfort there was came unexpectedly from Bombur. He woke up suddenly and sat scratching his head. He could not make out where he was at all, nor why he felt so hungry, for he had forgotten everything that had happened since they started their journey that May morning long ago. The last thing that he remembered was the party at the hobbit's house, and they had great difficulty in making him believe their tale of all the many adventures they had had since. When he heard that there was nothing to eat, he sat down and wept, for he felt very weak and wobbly in his legs. Why ever did I wake up? He cried. I was having such beautiful dreams. I dreamed I was walking in a forest rather like this one, only lit with torches on the trees, and lamps swinging from branches, and fires burning on the ground. And there was a great feast going on forever. A woodland king was there with a crown of leaves, and there was a merry singing, and I could not count or describe the things there were to eat and drink. You need not try, said Thorin. In fact, if you can't talk about something else, you had better be silent. We are quite annoyed enough with you as it is. If you hadn't waked up, we should have left you to your idiotic dreams in the forest. You are no joke to carry even after weeks of short commons. There was nothing now to be done but to tighten the belts around their empty stomachs and hoist their empty sacks and packs and trudge along the track without any great hope of ever getting to the end before they lay down and died of starvation. This they did all day, going very slowly and warily, while Bombur kept on wailing that his legs would not carry him and that he wanted to lie down and sleep. No, you don't, they said. Let your legs take their share. We have carried you far enough. All the same, he suddenly refused to go a step further and flung himself on the ground. Go on if you must, he said. I'm just going to lie here and sleep and dream of food if I can't get in any other way. I hope I never wake up again. At that very moment, Balin, who was little way ahead, called out, What was that? I thought I saw a twinkle of light in the forest. They all looked, and a longish way off, it seemed, they saw a red twinkle in the dark. Then another and another sprang out beside it. Even Bombur got up, and they hurried along then, not caring if it was trolls or goblins. The light was in front of them and to the left of the path, and when at last they had drawn level with it, it seemed plain that torches and fires were burning under the trees, but a good way off their track. It looks as if my dreams were coming true, gasped Bomber, puffing up behind. He wanted to rush straight off into wood after the lights, but the others remembered only too well the warning of Wizard and of Beyond. A fist would be no good if we never got back alive from it. But without fish, we shan't remain alive much longer anyway, said Bombur, and Bilbo heartily agreed with him. They argued about it backwards and forwards for a long while until they agreed at length to send out a couple of spies to creep near the lights and find out more about them. But then they could not agree on who was to be sent. No one seemed anxious to run the chance of being lost and never finding his friends again. In the end, in spite of warnings, hunger decided them because Bombur kept on describing all the good things that were being eaten according to his dream in the woodland feast. So they all left the path and plunged into forest together. After a great deal of creeping and crawling, they peered round and trunks and looked into clearing where some trees had been felled and ground leveled. There were many people there, elvish looking folk, all dressed in green and brown and sitting on sawn rings of felled trees in a great circle. There was a fire in their midst, and there were torches fastened to some of the trees round about. But most splendid sight of all, they were eating and drinking and laughing merrily. The smell of roast meats was so enchanting that, without waiting to consult one another, every one of them got up and scrambled forwards into the ring with one idea of begging for some food. No sooner had the first step into the clearing than all the lights went out as if by magic. Somebody kicked the fire and it went up in rockets of glittering sparks and vanished. They were lost in a completely lightless dark, and they could not even find one another, not for a long time at any rate. After blundering frantically in the gloom, falling over logs, bumping crash into trees, and shouting and calling till they must have waked everything in the forest for miles, at last they managed to gather themselves in a bundle and count themselves by touch. By that time they had of course quite forgotten in what direction the path lay, and they were all hopelessly lost, at least till morning. There was nothing for it but to settle down for a night where they were. They did not even dare to search on the ground for scraps of food for fear of becoming separated again. But they had not been lying long, and Bilbo was only just getting drowsy when Dory, whose turn it was to watch first, said in loud whisper, "The lights are coming out again over there, and more than ever of them." Up they all jumped. There, sure enough, not far away, were scores of twinkling lights, and they heard the voices and laughter quite plainly. They crept slowly towards them in a single line, each touching the back of the one in front. When they got near Thorin, when they got near, Thorin said, "No rushing forward this time. No one is to stir from hiding till I say. I shall send Mr. Baggins alone first to talk to them. They won't be frightened of him." "What about me of them?" thought Bilbo. "And anyway, I hope they won't do anything nasty to him." When they got to the edge of the circle of lights, they pushed Bilbo suddenly from behind. Before he had time to slip on his ring, he stumbled forward onto a full blaze of fires and torches. It was no good. Out went all the lights again, and complete darkness fell. If it had been difficult collecting themselves before, it was far worse this time, and they simply could not find the hobbit. Every time they counted themselves, it only made 13. They shouted and called, "Bilbo Baggins! Hobbit! You dreaded hobbit! Hi, hobbit! Confiscate you! Where are you?" And other things of that sort, but there was no answer. They were just giving up hope when Doris stumbled across him by sheer luck. In the dark, he fell over what he thought was a log, and he found it was Hobbit curled up fast asleep. It took a deal of shaking to wake him, and when he was awake, he was not pleased at all. "I was having such a lovely dream," he grumbled, "all about having a most gorgeous dinner." "Good heavens! He has gone like Bomber," they said. "Don't tell us about dreams. Dream diners aren't any good and we can't share them." "They are the best I'm likely to get in this beastly place," he muttered, as he lay down beside dwarfs and tried to go back to sleep and find his dream again. But that was not the last of the lights in the forest. Later, when the night must have been getting old, Kili, who was watching them, came and aroused them all again, saying, "There is a regular blaze of light begun not far away. Hundreds of torches and many fires must have been lit suddenly and by magic. And hark to singing and harps." After lying and listening for a while, they found they could not resist the desire to go nearer and try once more to get help. Up they got again, and this time the result was disastrous. The feast that they now saw was greater and more magnificent than before, and at the head of a long line of feasters sat a woodland king with a crown of leaves upon his golden hair, very much as Bombur had described in figure in his dream. The elvish folk were passing bowls from hand to hand and across the fires, and some were harping and many were singing. Their gleaming hair was twined with flowers. Green and white gems glinted on their collars and their belts, and their faces and their songs were filled with mirth. Loud and clear and fair were those songs, and out stepped Thorin to their midst. Dead silent fell in the middle of a word. Out went all the light. The fires leaped up in black smokes. Ashes and cinders were in the eyes of dwarfs, and the wood was filled again with their clamour and their cries. Bilbo found himself running around and round as he thought, and calling, Dori, Nori, Ori, Oin, Gloin, Filly, Killy, Pomful, Piffur, Bofur, Dwalin, Balin, Thorin, Oakenshield, while people he could not see or feel were doing the same all round him, with an occasional Bilbo thrown in. But the cries of others got steadily further and fainter, and though after a while it seemed to him they changed to yells and cries for help in the far distance, all noise at last died right away, and he was left alone in complete silence and darkness. That was one of his most miserable moments. But he soon made up his mind that it was no good trying to do anything till day came with some little light, and quite useless to go blundering about tiring himself out with no hope of any breakfast to revive him. So he sat himself down with his back to a tree, and not for the last time fell to thinking of his far distant hobbit hole with its beautiful pantries. He was deep in his thought of bacon and eggs and toast and butter when he felt something touch him. Something like a strong, sticky string was against his left hand, and when he tried to move, he found that his legs were already wrapped in the same stuff, so that when he caught up, he fell over. Then the great spider, who had been busy tying him up while he dozed, came up from behind him and came at him. He could only see the thing's eyes, but he could feel its hairy legs as it struggled to wind its abominable threads round and round him. It was lucky that he had come to his senses in time. Soon he would not have been able to move at all. As it was, he had a desperate fight before he got free. He beat the creature off with his hands. It was trying to poison him to keep him quiet, as small spiders do to flies, until he remembered his sword and drew it out. Then the spider jumped back, and he had time to cut his legs loose. After that, it was his turn to attack. The spider evidently was not used to things that carried such stings at their sides, or it would have hurried away quicker. Bilbo came at it before it could disappear and struck it with his sword right in the eyes. Then it went mad and leaped and danced and flung out its legs in horrible jerks until he killed it with another stroke. And then he fell down and remembered nothing more for a long while. There was a usual dim grey light of the forest day about him when he came to his senses. The spider lay dead beside him, and his sword blade was stained black. Somehow the killing of Giant Spider all alone by himself in the dark without the help of Wizard or the dwarfs or anyone else made a great difference to Mr. Baggins. He felt a different person, and much fiercer and bolder in spite of an empty stomach, as he wiped his sword onto the grass and put it back into his sheath. I will give you your name, he said to it, and I shall call you Sting. After that, he set out to explore. The forest was grim and silent, but obviously he had first of all to look for his friends, who were not likely to be very far off, unless they had been made prisoners by the elves or worse things. Bilbo felt that it was unsafe to shout, and he stood a long while wondering in what direction the path lay and in what direction he should go first to look for the dwarfs. Oh, why did we not remember Bjorn's advice and Gandalf's? He lamented. What a mess we are in now. I only wish it was we. It is horrible being all alone. In the end, he made as good a guess as he could at the direction from which the cries for help had come in the night, and by luck, he was born with a good share of it. He guessed more or less right, as you will see. Having made up his mind, he crept along as cleverly as he could. Hobbits are clever at quietness, especially in woods, as I have already told you. Also, Bilbo had slipped on his ring before he started. That is why the spiders neither saw nor heard him coming. He had picked his way stealthily for some distance when he noticed a place of dense black shadow ahead of him. Black even for the forest, like a patch of midnight that had never been cleared away. As he drew nearer, he saw that it was made by spider webs, one behind and over and tangled with another. Suddenly he saw too that there were spiders, huge and horrible, sitting in the branches above him. And ring or no ring, he trembled with fear lest they should discover him. Standing behind a tree, he watched a group of them for a long time. And then, in the silence and stillness of a wood, he realized that these loathsome creatures were speaking one to another. Their voices were a sort of thin creaking and hissing, but he could make out many of the words that they said. They were talking about the dwarfs. It was sharp struggle, but worth it, said one. What a nasty thick skins they have to be sure. But I'll wager there is good juice inside. Eh, they'll make fine eating when they're hung a bit, said another. Don't hang them too long, said third. They're not as fat as they might be. Shh. Been feeding none too well of late, I should guess. Kill them, I say, hissed the fourth. Kill them now, and hang them dead for a while. They're dead now, I'll warrant, said the first. That they are not. I saw one struggling just now, just coming round again, I should say. After a beautiful sleep, I'll show you. With that, one of the fat spiders ran along a rope till it came to a dozen bundles hanging in a row from a high branch. Bilbo was horrified now that he noticed them for the first time, dangling in the shadows. To see a dwarfish foot sticking out of bottoms of some of the bundles, or here and there a tip of nose or a bit of a beard or of a hood. To the fattest of those bundles the spider went. It is poor old Bombur, I bet, thought Bilbo, and nipped hard at the nose that stuck out. There was a muffled yelp inside, and a toe shot up and kicked the spider straight and hard. There was a life in Bombur still. There was a noise like a kicking of a flabby football, and the enraged spider fell off branch, only catching itself with its own thread just in time. The others laughed. You are quite right, they said. The Mitch alive and kicking. I will soon put an end to that, hissed the angry spider, climbing back onto branch. Bilbo saw that the moment had come when he must do something. He could not get up at the brutes, and he had nothing to shoot with. But looking about, he saw that in the place where there were many stones lying in what appeared to be now dry little watercourse. Bilbo was pretty fair shot with stone, and it did not take him long to find a nice smooth egg-shaped one that fitted his hand cozily. As a boy, he used to practice throwing stones at things until rabbits and squirrels and even birds got out of his way as quick as lightning if they saw him stoop. And even grown up, he had still spent a deal of his time at quoits, dart throwing, shooting at the wand, bowls, ninepins, and other quiet games of aiming and throwing sort. Indeed, he could do a lot of things besides blowing smoke rings, asking riddles, and cooking that I haven't had time to tell you about. There is no time now. While he was picking up stones, the spider had reached Bombur, and soon he would have been dead. At that moment, Bilbo threw. Stone struck the spider plunk on his head, and it dropped senseless off the tree, flopped to the ground with all its legs curled up. The next stone went whizzing through a big web, snapping its cords and taking off the spider sitting in the middle of it. Whack! Dead. After that, there was a deal of commotion in the spider colony, and they forgot the dwarfs for a bit, I can tell you. They could not see Bilbo, but they could make a guess at the direction from which the stones were coming. As quick as lightning, they came running and swinging towards the hobbit, flinging out their long threads in all directions till the air seemed full of waving snars. Bilbo, however, soon slipped away to a different place. The idea came to him to lead the furious spiders further and further away from dwarfs if he could, to make them curious, excited, and angry all at once. When about 50 had gone off to a place where he had stood before, he threw some more stones at these and at others that had stopped behind. Then, dancing among the trees, he began to sing a song to infuriate them and bring them all after him, and also to let dwarfs hear his voice. This is what he sang. Old fat spider spinning in a tree. Old fat spider can't see me. Attercock, Attercock, oh, won't you stop? Stop your spinning and look for me. Old Tom Body, all big body, old Tom Body can't spy me. Attercock, Attercock, down you drop. You will never catch me up your tree. Not a very good, perhaps, but then you must remember that he had to make it up himself. On the spur of very awkward moment, it did what he wanted anyway. As he sang, he threw some more stones and stamped. Practically all the spiders in the place came after him. Some dropped to the ground, others raced along the branches, swung from tree to tree, or cast new ropes across the dark spaces. They made for his noise far quicker than he had expected. They were frightfully angry. Quite apart from the stones, no spider had ever liked being called Attercop, and Tom Noddy, of course, is insulting to anybody. Off Bilbo scuttled to a fresh place, but several of the spiders had run now to different points in the glade where they lived and were busy spinning webs across all the spaces between the tree stems. Very soon the hobbit would be caught in a thick fence of them all round him. That at least was the spider's idea. Standing now in the middle of hunting, and spinning insects, Bilbo plucked up his courage and began a new song. Lazy love and crazy cock are wearing webs to wind me. I am far more sweet and other meat, but still they cannot wind me. Here I am, not a little fly. You are fat and lazy. You cannot trap me though you try in your cobwebs crazy. With that, he turned and found that the last space between two tall trees had been closed with a web, but luckily not a proper web. Only great strands of double thick spider rope run hastily backwards and forwards from trunk to trunk. Out came his little sword. He slashed the threads to pieces and went off singing. The spiders saw the sword, though I don't suppose they knew what it was, and at once the whole lot of them came hurryingly after the hobbit along the grounds and the branches, hairy legs waving, nippers, spinners snapping, eyes popping, full of froth and rage. They followed him into forest until Bilbo had gone as far as he dared. Then, quieter than a mouse, he stole back. He had precious little time, he knew, before the spiders were disgusted and came back into their trees where the dwarfs were hung. In the meanwhile, he had to rescue them. The worst part of the job was getting up onto the long branch where the bundles were dangling. I don't suppose he would have managed it if a spider had not luckily left a rope hanging down. With its help, though it stuck to his hand and hurt him, he scrambled up, only to meet an old, slow, wicked, fat-bodied spider who had remained behind to guard the prisoners, and had been busy pinching them to see which one was the juiciest to eat. It had bought it had thought of starting the feast while the others were away, but Mr. Baggins was in a hurry, and before the spider knew what was happening, it felt his sting and rolled off the branch, dead. Bilbo's next job was to lose the dwarf. What was he to do? If he cut the sting which hung him up, the wretched dwarf would tumble thump to the ground a good way below, wriggling along the branch, which made all the poor dwarfs dance and dangle like ripe fruit. He reached the first bundle. To know what happened next, you need to listen to the next chapter. See you soon.